Hello and welcome to our brand new show, Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. US President-elect Donald Trump to be sentenced in his New York hush money case today, marking a dramatic turn that could make him the first felon in the White House. The Kremlin says that President Vladimir Putin is open to talks with Donald Trump after the US President-elect said a meeting between the two leaders was being set up. Raging wildfires in Los Angeles kill at least 10 people and devour nearly 10,000 homes. As authorities continue operations, at least 5 fires continue to burn into a third night. Allies of Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, says that authorities kidnapped her from Caracas after she sneaked out of her hideout to lead a protest against President Maduro. And China accuses Germany of hyping spy threats after prosecutors in Berlin charged 3 suspects accused of supplying information to Chinese intelligence. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. Now for our top story today, we begin with India, where a longer work week concept has found a new advocate. We are talking about S.N. Subrahmanyan, the chairman of Indian multinational conglomerate L&T, has stoked a row with his remarks. Now, during an employee interaction, Subrahmanyan was asked about L&T's policy of a 6-day work week, despite the company being among India's largest conglomerates. In response, the company's top boss said he regretted not being able to make his employees work on Sundays. He even questioned the value of time off, asking, what do people even do sitting at home? His speech was garnished with a pinch of misogyny when he said, and I quote, "How long can you stare at your wife?" Now, the L&T boss mentions how he also works on Sundays. But there's something I would like to point out here. S.N. Subrahmanyan draws a 51 crore rupee annual salary, which is over $5.9 million. This is more than 535 times the average salary of a worker in the same company. Now, his comments have set off a firestorm. Last year, Infosys Co-Founder Narayana Murthy had triggered a similar debate when at a leadership summit he suggested a 70-hour work week for India to boost its productivity. He even said he does not believe in a work-life balance. Industrialist Goenka was among the first ones to condemn the remark. He mocked the L&T boss, saying, why not rename Sunday to Sun Duty and make day off a mythical concept? He called the 90-hour work week a recipe for burnout, not success. Work smart, not slave, he added. Indian actor Deepika Padukone has weighed in too. On Instagram, she said that it was shocking to see people in such senior positions make such statements. When L&T justified its chairman's remark, she said they only made it worse. Now, the former Indian badminton player Jwala Gutta also weighed in, saying it was unbelievable that people at the highest positions were not taking mental health seriously. She even called the statement misogynistic. In response to the backlash, L&T issued a statement defending its chairman. A company spokesperson said the remarks were a reflection of larger ambitions and that extraordinary outcomes for the country require extraordinary efforts. This simmering debate is not just limited to India. The L&T top boss even cited China's example, crediting the country's success to its strong work ethic. He said while Americans work 50 hours a week, the Chinese often put in 90 hours. China has a 996 policy, which means working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for 6 days per week. That's 72 hours. But the L&T top boss failed to take notice of the frequent protests by Chinese youth, and this over long working hours and culture. In the West, it has brought in a trend called quiet quitting, where employees gradually disengage from their jobs, doing the bare minimum. In recent years, clearly there has been a drastic shift in people's outlook about work life, especially among the youth and especially after the pandemic. But some billionaires and top bosses seem to have failed to understand this. It could be a generational gap. The youth sees such working hours as exploitation. They label this lack of understanding of the top bosses as elitist. Some, however, may back the long work hour trend. Many billionaires and top entrepreneurs have practiced it themselves. The former Yahoo CEO, Marissa Mayer, worked 130 hours a week. Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk worked 120 hours a week. And Alibaba co-founder Jack Ma worked 70 hours a week. Let's take a look at the countries with the highest average hours per week. Despite a relatively small population, Bhutan ranks at the top. Employees in the Himalayan kingdom work an average of 54.4 hours per week. It is followed by the United Arab Emirates, Lesotho, Congo, and Qatar. India ranks 13th among the world's most overworked countries, with workers logging 46.7 hours each week, while 51% of Indians' workforce is working 49 or more hours per week. India ranks second among countries with the highest rates of prolonged working hours, and minimum wages in India are among the lowest. Most Indians feel that they are overworked and underpaid. So work-life balance is certainly missing for many. Mexico, Colombia, Costa Rica, Turkey, and Japan are the top 5 countries with the worst work-life balance. How important is work-life balance? And do long working hours mean more success? Well, no. While more working hours does not guarantee success, it certainly has a downside. Research says that working more than 55 hours a week impacts health. The World Health Organization says that poor work-life balance can stoke a burnout. According to a 2021 WHO study, long working hours are responsible for 750,000 deaths each year from stroke and heart disease. It can also increase the risk of anxiety and depression. So how much work is too much work? Is it time for countries to reassess strategy? The L&T top boss's 90-hour workweek remark has certainly fueled this discourse. So for more on this, we have with us economist and entrepreneur Mithali Nikore, who is joining us from New Delhi. Welcome to Firstpost.
Thanks, Alison. Lovely to be here.
Now, Mithali, what are your thoughts on the feasibility of a 90-hour work week in today's work culture? How does it align with modern concepts of work-life balance and employee well-being?
So, Alison, I think firstly, I would like to take a step back and really talk about, the intergenerational conflict when it comes to workplace structures. I mean, at the end of the day, when we think about it, Generation Z, Gen Z, who is coming and working with us today, they value flexibility. They value, workplaces where they are trusted to deliver on their work. They are trusted to, take responsibility, take leadership, and move forward. So, when you have new generations like millennials like myself and Gen Z who are coming in and they say, what, we don't want to necessarily even come into an office. We can work from anywhere. As long as we deliver our outputs, that should be sufficient. So I think that the first point to understand over here is that generations are changing. And secondly, I do think that these comments are reflective of a very patriarchal mindset because, specifically the comment about how long can you stare at your wife sort of implicitly assumes that a worker is male. However, we know that today's workforce in India is not necessarily predominantly male. Yes, of course, a majority is male, but L&T themselves have a large proportion of women employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mithali, critics have labeled the remarks as misogynistic, which you touched on there, and they have warned of potential burnout. How do you see such expectations affecting workforce diversity and long-term productivity, particularly in industries which are striving for inclusivity?
So I think the first thing and most important is that when we look at any employee, they should not be working beyond a point in a day and then, of course, in a week. Of course, there may be situations where, there's a deadline, there's a deliverable that's required, and all of us stretch in different ways. When there's a deadline on a Monday, sometimes even my team comes in and works on a Sunday, but then they get a compensatory leave. And the most important thing is that if any
Yes.
employee is working overtime, they should be paid for it. It should not be free work. It should not be, oh, you come in and you work 90 hours a week on a salary that's actually meant for a 40-hour work week. That is absolutely unfair. And, when we talk about large corporations, they
Yes.
have to realize that they have a responsibility when it comes to fair wages.
And given the global shift toward flexible work environments, do you think that such comments reflect outdated perspectives, or is there merit in promoting extreme dedication for economic growth and innovation?
So I think, Alison, when we talk about dedication, I can be dedicated to my job sitting right here, even if my job is in a different city or even a different country. I mean, as an entrepreneur today, I serve
Yeah.
clients who are based in the US, who are based in Europe, who are based in, other geographies. And the Indian IT industry, for example, is known for this. The Indian IT industry has been built on services exports. So, at the end of the day, for us to say that, oh, you can only show your dedication to a job when you go to an office physically is a very outdated statement, and it's a very outdated work structure.
Yeah.
Today, young people are looking for flexibility. They're looking for workplaces that will say, you know what, if you want to work on a Sunday, sure, work on a Sunday, but then take the Monday off. And that's absolutely fine with us, as long as you get your deliverables in. So I think it's about respecting the boundaries of an employee. It's about respecting the leisure time of an employee. I mean, the question of what do you do sitting at home? I mean, that's none of the employer's business. It should be up to the employee, whatever they want to do with their time. And even upskilling cannot happen unless you have some free time to think about what you want to do next. If we look at the report of the World Economic Forum, I mean, it's just come out, the jobs report, it talks about the fact that nearly half of the people in the workforce today will need to be upskilled and reskilled in the next 5 years in order to be able to provide the kind of labor productivity that's required in future jobs. And this upskilling can only happen in downtime. It cannot happen when an employee is actively working. So I do think that, there's a lot of balance required and nuance required.
Right. Natalie, thank you very much for being with us on First Post.
Thank you.
Now for our next story, we shift focus to Indonesia. The Asian country is at odds with tech giant Apple. It is not allowing Apple to sell its latest iPhone 16 in its markets. In the latest, Indonesia has upheld a ban on selling iPhone 16, despite Apple's $1 billion investment pledge for the country. Jakarta says that the tech giant has continued to fail to comply with its domestic investment policy. Indonesia banned the device's sale in October last year for its 280 million people. According to its rules, smartphones sold in Indonesia should have at least 35% locally made parts. However, Apple doesn't have manufacturing facilities in Indonesia. The American tech giant's executives flew to Jakarta for negotiations with the Indonesian government earlier this week. Now, the Indonesian minister held 2 days of meetings with Apple's Vice President of Global Government Affairs, Nick Aman, and Apple proposed a deal to build a local production facility. The proposed unit was for the production of Apple's AirTags, which is a tracking device. The $1 billion facility would be based in Indonesia's Batam Island, close to Singapore, and would start operations next year. However, the Indonesian minister said that the proposed deal doesn't satisfy the conditions for a locally made iPhone part. He added that the AirTag is just an accessory and not a part of the phone. The Indonesian minister said, and I quote, "There is no basis for the ministry to issue a local content certification as a way for Apple to have the permission to sell iPhone 16 because the facility has no direct relations." Instead, the Indonesian authorities made a counter-proposal to Apple, the details of which were not revealed. Indonesia is not the only country where Apple is facing trouble. Now, earlier, Brazil banned the sale of iPhones that do not come with chargers in 2022. Apple had stopped packing chargers since the launch of the iPhone 12 in 2020. The company still cannot sell its device without a charger in the South American nation. Brazil authorities had also fined Apple for $2.38 million over discriminatory practices. The tech giant's woes are increasing in China as well. The Chinese state firms and agencies have reportedly asked its employees to stop using iPhones. The directive is aimed at reducing China's dependency on foreign technology. The American multinational is also facing hurdles in rolling out its artificial intelligence models in China. Now, Apple uses OpenAI's ChatGPT for its voice assistant Siri everywhere else, but the software is not available in China. Apple is now in talks with Tencent and ByteDance to integrate their artificial intelligence models into iPhones sold in China, with serious challenges in China. Apple is looking to set up more production facilities in Asia, and Indonesia, the 10th largest economy, could be one of the prospects. The country has been strategically positioning itself as an emerging tech hub and is poised to become a significant player in the global technology landscape. The government has been pushing to attract significant investments from tech giants, and this includes Apple as well. Indonesia is certainly set to benefit from Apple's $1 billion AirTag facility. But will it loosen its rules to make space for the tech giant, or will Apple shift focus to freer Asian markets? And moving on now to the Philippines, where the daughter of the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos and the half-sister of the President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is facing a booze ban. Now, Australia police say that Annalisa Kaur and her husband Alexander Kaur have been accused of causing disturbance with their unruly behavior while intoxicated on a Jetstar flight from Hobart to Sydney. Annalisa, the half-sister of the Philippines president, has been accused of grabbing and shaking another passenger while exiting the aircraft toilet. The Australian police also urge travellers to be mindful of their behaviour at airports. The two pleaded guilty to charges of not complying with safety instructions and consuming alcohol not provided by the crew, but denied a charge of assaulting the fellow passenger, which carries up to 2 years in prison. Later, while on bail, they agreed to a booze ban. Now, if found guilty, the couple could be fined up to $8,500 for each charge. 53-year-old Annalisa Kaur is Ferdinand Marcos's Australia-raised daughter, with former Sydney model Evelyn Hagesi, and the half-sister of the current Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The late dictator Ferdinand Marcos ruled the Philippines for more than 2 decades until he was unseated in a revolution in 1986. The Marcos family was forced to flee the country and sought exile in Hawaii. Now, the family is back in power in the Philippines. While his half-sister has made headlines with a mid-air drunken brawl, back home, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., too, has been accused of being a drug addict. The former Philippines president, Rodrigo Duterte, has repeatedly taken a dig at Marcos Jr., saying the country has a drug addict as president. Without commenting directly on the incident involving President Marcos's half-sister, the Jetstar Airlines said that the company would not tolerate disruptive behavior on its aircraft, and that the safety and well-being of its customers and crew is their top priority. If you are an anime fan, our next story is for you. Now, what if I tell you sometime in the future anime would fade away? What if I tell you years from now anime wouldn't exist or would just be a piece of history? And what if I tell you that this could actually be true because Japan could be extinct? Demographic decline in Japan is becoming an alarming existential threat. Every year, millions of foreign visitors visit Japan's Mount Fuji. It is subject to numerous works of art that have inspired generations around the world. But just a few centuries from now, like the rest of Japan, there may be no Japanese left to host a foreign tourist in Yamanashi Prefecture, because in the year 2720, Japan could be down to its last child under the age of 14. The stark projection released by a Japanese university paints a haunting picture of demographic decline. The projection is not just a theoretical warning, it's a reality taking shape across Japan. With each passing year, Japan is moving closer to the extinction of its human population. Japan's birth rate has been falling drastically since the 20th century. In 2023, the country reported just over 720,000 births. Meanwhile, deaths doubled more than births, with more than 1.5 million people passing away. The fertility rate, or the number of children a person may birth in their lifetime, was down to 1.2 in 2023. The threat of extinction is most visible in the rural areas, where most youngsters have migrated to cities in recent years. In the aging countryside, several villages are facing extinction. In recent years, the term "akia" has become a grim catastrophe catchphrase for the country's population crisis. It literally means an empty house. The latest government data shows that there are 9 million akiyas, or abandoned homes, in Japan, enough to house Australia's entire population. The towns filled with empty houses can soon translate into extinct municipalities. Experts estimate that by the year 2050, 744 Japanese municipalities could disappear entirely due to the chronically low birth rate. To combat the demographic crisis, the Japanese government has introduced several policies to encourage marriage and parenting. Tokyo's municipality even launched its own dating app, which requires users to pledge their intention to marry. But such efforts have had limited success in reversing the population decline. Less and less youngsters intend to get married and have children. The urban centers, even with young residents, are becoming population black holes. Japanese youngsters cite high living costs, work-life imbalance, and cultural shifts as barriers to having children.
It's becoming harder and harder for grandparents to help with childcare. So I think from the very beginning, the social environment makes it hard for women to have a lot of children and continue to work.
In recent years, immigration has been cited as a potential solution to Japan's demographic woes. Foreign population topped 3 million for the first time in 2023. But strict policies introduced in 1952 still influence Japan's approach to immigration today.
I think Japan is already well past the time limit for solving its declining population. My feeling is that if we don't change direction and put in place systems that welcome workers from overseas, it won't be enough.
Japan's demographic decline is more than just numbers. It's a story of communities vanishing, traditions fading, and a nearly humanless future. The question remains, can Japan turn the tide against population decline? And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.